Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. And today's episode, we are going to continue our focus on the ongoing civil war taking place inside of the former state of Ethiopia. And first and foremost, I have switched maps. Instead of using the normal Google Earth map, I am using the Wiki updates in terms of the areas controlled by all varying forces within the scope of this conflict. So first and foremost, obviously, we're looking right now at the Tigray region, with most of the Tigray region under the control of the Tigrayan Defense Forces, based again in green. To the south, as we head and we look towards southern Tigray, you can see that Alamata, right now at least, is under the control of the ENDF or B loyalists. That is not the case at this point. This has not been updated yet. But we, in fact, believe Alamata, while being a little bit contested, somewhat contested, is for the most part under the control of the Tigrayan Defense Forces. There are some reports that some Fano militia units could be active inside of Alamata, but for the most part, the intel that we have currently would indicate that the Tigrayan Defense Forces are in control of Alamata and actually have fairly substantial defensive lines, both northwest of Alamata as well. So again, as we know, the Abiy loyalists did attempt to maneuver from Alamata towards Korem and were met with stifling resistance and had to withdraw back to Alamata, at which time the Tigrayan Defense Forces launched a number of counterattacks within the vicinity of Alamata, further driving the Abiy loyalist forces further south towards Waja. But at this time, again, the Tigrayan Defense Forces are controlling Alamata, and in fact also have areas to the west and east of Alamata as well. We continue to hear about a buildup and consolidation of Amhara militia units and Abiy loyalists that are within the vicinity of Weldia and Kobo, that are continuing to operate and are preparing for possible further operations into the Tigray region. But specifically, what I wanted to talk about first and foremost is the continued actions by the Oromo Liberation Army. And I've scrolled down to where you can see the area west of Addis Ababa. And as you can see, much of western Oromia is under the control of the Oromo Liberation Army. One other issue to note in this ongoing conflict, obviously, we are aware that each region has its own semi-independent regional forces. So we have the Afar regional forces, the Amhara regional forces, which are really an amalgamation of various different units, and some of these other paramilitary units, obviously, we see in the Amhara region are incredibly large. Now, the same goes for the Oromia region, where you do have these regional units, these regional special police forces, these regional special forces, as they're commonly called. Again, these are not special forces in the terms of say, Western special forces or even any other special forces. They're more the lines of a paramilitary, full-time paramilitary police type of force with a fairly a significant combat component in terms of being able to deploy motorized infantry companies and fairly large formations of trained infantry fighters. But again, what we have heard is there have been some fairly large defections of the Oromo regional special forces units, or these regional paramilitary police units that are operating in Oromia. And it would seem that as many as 2,000 of these Oromia special forces have in fact defected to the Oromo Liberation Army. And this is one reason why we're starting to see more and more area come under the control of the Oromo Liberation Army. At this point in time, we're now probably seeing the Oromo Liberation Army of a size that it has really never been before. It's probably right now, as we speak, continuing to gain strength, continuing to gain recruits, and at a certain point in the very near future, if not currently, we could see the Oromo Liberation Army, in terms of size, being as big as it's ever been, even in the past. But again, this is becoming a fairly credible threat to the Prosperity Party, to the Abiy loyalists, especially in both the Western Oromia and in the South, in Southern Oromia as well. But again, we're continuing to see an uptick in these operations by the Oromo Liberation Army. We continue to see more and more varying types of weapons being deployed by the Oromo Liberation Army. We are continuing to see open air training camps with huge numbers of recruits, and that is indicative of the nature of this conflict, and really inside of Oromia, we're kind of seeing a civil war within a civil war. So there is a very large percentage of the population that does not support the Prosperity Party, that does not support the Abiy loyalist forces and their Amharan regional allies. And at the same time, there is still a decent amount of support in Oromia for the Prosperity Party and the Abiy loyalists as well. So again, Oromia is the largest region, both in size and in population, and its society appears, at least on the surface right now, to be fairly fragmented in who supports whom. And again, as you can see from the map, which is fairly accurate, not completely accurate, but would give you an idea of the amount of territory that is currently controlled by the Oromo Liberation Army or supporting the Oromo Liberation Army in some way. But again, we're seeing the Prosperity Party, the Abiy loyalist forces, are really starting to struggle and vacate many of the areas in the Oromia region where it once had forward operating bases and or areas that it controlled, and have basically handed over those areas to the Oromo Liberation Army, or the OLA has simply overrun a lot of these forward operating bases, these more remote operating bases in Western Oromia and other parts of Oromia as well. But in terms of the conflict that is taking place in Oromia and the conflict that is now and currently going on around the Tigray region, one of the strategies that we could start to see from the Abiy loyalists is a win, hold, win strategy. So right now it has continued to operate its anaconda strategy around the Tigray region, and would appear quite possibly now to be turning on and looking inward to make a move on the Oromo Liberation Army in Oromia. Right now, it would appear that the Abiy loyalists, with the use of drones, may feel at this time that it can hold areas around the Tigray region with the use of drones, while at the same time quite possibly moving some of these forces that were deployed against the Tigray region, against the Tigrayan Defense Forces, and then move those forces in to then crush the Oromo Liberation Army, or make an attempt to crush the Oromo Liberation Army. And we have seen over the past few months that indeed the Oromo Liberation Army has taken on some conventional aspects. Again, that has been going on in the past, but more or less the Oromo Liberation Army has been operating as an insurgency army in terms of utilizing guerrilla warfare to strike against the Abiy regime and the Prosperity Party. But once we saw the Tigrayan forces move into the Amhara region, we then saw the Oromo Liberation Army start to utilize more conventional methods to its approach in terms of seizing and holding on to cities and areas inside of Oromia and in other areas around the former state of Ethiopia as well. But not confirming that this is going to occur, but it is possible that we could start to see a flexing of forces from the Abiy loyalists from the Tigray region, quite possibly looking inward to try and eliminate the threat that the Oromo Liberation Army is currently having on the Prosperity Party. Again, if we just go back several weeks when the Tigrayan Defense Forces were on the gates of Debre Berhan and operating near Debre Sena, we indeed saw that the Oromo Liberation Army was operating very close to Addis Ababa. And there were indeed reports that we could start to see infiltration units of the Oromo Liberation Army actively moving into Addis Ababa, also known as Finfinne, in an effort quite possibly to attempt to make direct attacks on governmental assets inside of Addis Ababa itself. But that never actually came to fruition. We continued to see the use of drones and other assets by the Abiy loyalists in this conflict. Now we are starting to see the use of drones and continued use of fixed-wing assets against the Oromo Liberation Army. That is now increasing. We continue to see the use of drones and fixed-wing assets in the Tigray region as we speak. There is almost daily attacks by the Abiy loyalists using these multi-role fighter jets, fighter bombers, and of course the omnipresent threat of the drones as well. But again, we will probably start to see the possibility of more and more drone use being utilized against the Oromo Liberation Army in the days and weeks ahead. That has already occurred with some systems, but more systems could be used obviously in the future as and if the Prosperity Party and the Abiy loyalists looked to reassert control over many of these areas that are now under the control of the Oromo Liberation Army. But again, with that being said, the Oromo Liberation Army continues to increase in manpower, continues to increase in capabilities. We continue to see more and more variety of weapon systems being deployed by the Oromo Liberation Army. We are seeing more heavier systems being utilized, in some cases artillery, mortars, and other assets as well that have been captured in the last few months from regime stockpiles and regime barracks and military bases that have been overrun by the Oromo Liberation Army. But that is the current status right now within the context of the ongoing, what I would define a civil war within a civil war that is taking place inside of the Oromia region. Again, we believe that the Oromo Liberation Army probably numbers in the tens of thousands at this point, a very significant and robust fighting force that continues to harry and cause issue for the Prosperity Party and the Abiy loyalist forces and their Amharan regional allies in the Amhara region. In terms of the Tigray region, again, not much has changed since the report from yesterday, but we can say that it would appear that Abiy loyalist forces have been driven back from southern Tigray, especially in and around Alamata, and appear at this point to be on the defensive in southern Tigray in terms of quite possibly even being able to hold a buffer zone in southern Tigray at this point. And again, could that be the issue of some of these forces being transferred to engage the Oromo Liberation Army? Hard to say at this point, but on the surface, that could definitely be something that is currently ongoing. In terms of Western Tigray, status quo, we continue to see infiltration attacks and sporadic skirmishes along the Tigray River line and across to the west of the Tigray River. We continue to see the Amhara regional militias attempt to press into southern Tigray just north of a DRK. This map is incorrect. We believe currently a DRK is under the control of Amhara regional militia units, but again, their ability to press further north from a DRK has really been limited by the defensive positions of the Tigrayan Defense Forces that are operating within the vicinity of a DRK. There are also Tigrayan Defense Forces that are also continue to harry and push across the border both east and to a lesser extent west of our DRK. In the north, along the border with the despotic regime of Eritrea, we continue to hear about sporadic clashes occurring. We continue to hear about troop deployments of the Eritrean army, but we have not yet seen any massive movement of Eritrean forces at least along the border of the Tigray region. We have continued to see Eritrean troops move into the Afar region and are operating again in the Afar region and even in the Oromia region and even in Addis Ababa in terms of security assets which are part of the regime protection force of the Abiy Ahmed regime. But that is the news and information for today. We're continuing to cover events as they occur, and we will have more information as it occurs. So again, thanks for joining us, and we will soon have more content for your consumption. Have a great day, everybody.